Hello garden friends, Jersey Shore Lisa from MyNJGarden.com. I'm going to start making a series about New Jersey native edible plants that you can add to your edible landscape. The reason natives are so important to invite into your gardens and your landscapes and your yards is because they support local wildlife populations. They're important for our ecosystem. They keep the insect population of beneficial insects alive and well, and they help us to combat damaging pests in our yards. Baby birds need caterpillars to survive. That's like more than 90% of their diet when they're babies is caterpillars. These native plants help to support the insects that evolved along with them, including butterflies and moths that produce caterpillars to feed baby birds. We all love birds. So let's plant natives. Not only do they support local wildlife, but they require very little to almost no fertilizer at all, and very little irrigation, because they evolved in this climate with these soil conditions, with our weather patterns, and so they're tough, they're hardy, they are ready to thrive and survive in this planting zone and in this location. So you don't have to come out and water your plants and fertilize your plants. You can come out and visit your plants and enjoy your garden, and that's what I like to do in my yard. So let me show you some of my favorite native edible plants to add to the landscape. And if you subscribe to the channel and like the video, you can join me for all of these videos. I'm going to make a series of them because I have a lot of native edible plants. There are more than you would think. So let's check out what we have in the yard. So that's what I want to tell you about, so that you can add these native edible options to your edible landscaping plans, and they'll require very little maintenance from you after they're well established in your yard. The first edible native plant I'd like to discuss is the beach plum. Beach plum are found wild all throughout the Jersey Shore, and that's where I am. I'm in planting zone 7A, but these can be found growing along the dunes all along Island Beach State Park, which is very local to me. These are flowering. They have been flowering for about a week or so. A little over a week, I think. I have 3 of them in the yard. Here's one, here's 2. This one didn't flower very much at all, but this one is still going strong. And you can see that the habits are very different. This one is far more vertical, and these are more horizontal. These were all planted, those 2 were planted at the same time. This one was planted a year later. You do need 2 distinctly different genetic specimens in order to have them pollinate. So you need a pollinator. It's not a self-pollinating plant. The plums themselves are kind of the size of fat Bing cherries that you get from the grocery store. They do have that center pit just like a cherry does, but it does distinctly taste, the flavor is that of a plum. So you will find some that are more bitter than others, more sweet. The longer you leave them on the bush, the sweeter they'll get. Some years you'll get more fruit than others. Obviously this shrub is not going to have nearly as much fruit as the others this year, but last year it was laden with fruit. So there is a little bit of variation there as far as the reliability of the harvest. Having 2 or 3 allows you to have that overlap and cover what might be a light harvest from one bush with another. They're used to growing in sand. I have a very sandy yard, and they're used to growing on the beach. Another native New Jersey shrub with edible berries is the Aronia berry. This is a black Aronia berry, and I believe the variety is called Viking. This is supposed to be one of the sweetest of the Aronia berries, but Aronia berries are not sweet. I will tell you that. They are also known as choke berries, and they are flowering now, and the flower clusters are really pretty. They are white flowers, and they actually come in blackberries, which is this shrub here. And this has been pruned a couple of times over the years to keep it bushy. This shrub is about 4 years old now, and it's planted in between the apple trees. I also have a red Aronia berry over here in the rain garden, and that is also flowering now, but it's got a very different shape. There's far less leaves on it at this point, though it will leaf out more once the flowers are done. And these flowers are just covering the entire branchiness of the shrub. So they do flower a little bit differently, but they are both of the same family. Red Aronia berries don't get sweet at all. In fact, sometimes they stay on the bush through the winter. So even the birds are not all that fond of them, though they do support local pollinators. And so it gets to stay in the rain garden because it's a really ornamental looking shrub, and I love it. So over here, this again, it's the Aronia berry, also known as chokeberry. They get ripe around the beginning of August, and you can tell that they are as ripe as they're going to get when the little stem that attaches the berry to the branch turns dark. Once that turns dark, that's as good as they get. You better pick them or the birds will pick them for you. I would not suggest eating these out of hand. They will take all the spit out of your mouth. They're very astringent, but they can be added to baked goods or made into a really delicious, this is my daughter's favorite jam, a jam. And of course you would add sugar to it. So sometimes the most bitter berries make the tastiest jam for some reason, and these are one of them. So this is black Aronia berry, is another native shrub. Another native shrub to New Jersey are blueberries. Blueberries come in a couple of different varieties. There are high bush blueberries and low bush blueberries. Now in my yard, I have native low bush blueberries. These are over here. They came up all around the edges of this yard because this was new construction, and I guess there were some remnants of a root system of these native low bush blueberries all around the edges, and they've been coming up, and I've been letting them come up because they flower at the same time as my cultivated blueberries do, so I'm sure that they help with pollination. These are varieties that I purchased and bought, so I know that there's a Jersey, I know that there's a Berkeley, I know that there's a blue crop. I'm not sure which one is which, but this one flowers and fruits really reliably. You can see that the fruit is starting to set there. So I do have plenty of blueberries on the bush for this season, but they're not even close to being ripe. The flowers are just falling now. So these are flowering now. Some of the blueberries didn't do that well. On this side of the bed, they're kind of struggling. This bush is only 2 years old, so it's struggling a little bit to establish, and I think it's going to end up being that the soil in that spot just isn't as acidic as the berry would like it to be. Blueberries love acidic soil. The ground here in Ocean County, New Jersey tends to be slightly acidic, and that's why blueberries grow here so well natively. But if your yard isn't quite as acidic as blueberries would like it to be, you can amend the soil by adding some high sulfur content of a soil amendment fertilizer. You can get that in garden centers, and that will help to make your soil more acidic and more hospitable to blueberry bushes. The next native tree that I'd like to talk about is the Paw Paw. I do have 3 Paw Paw trees in the yard, and they've been flowering for quite some time now. I'm going to show you the flower up close here. These are the largest fruit to North America, the largest native North American fruit. The fruit ends up having a very tropical flavor, so it's very surprising to find that as a native fruit here in New Jersey. You can see this is where some of the Paw Paw flowers had been, and the flower has fallen off, and those little bits, those green bits there sticking out, are the Paw Paws themselves. So they will swell throughout the season. It's just starting to leaf out. You can see the leaves on the edges of the branches. These leaves get very large, so it's an interesting specimen to have in the yard. It's a very different texture looking tree than many of the smaller leafed trees. The tree only gets to be about 25 to 30 feet high. And as a young tree, it likes to be in the understory, in shade, and then it wants to grow out above the canopy to get more sunlight. These trees are actually in basically full sun for most of the day. As the sun is rising right now, it's very early, but they do get quite a lot of sun. And they did really well getting established. The center tree is a little smaller than the others because it got damaged early in its life in the first season. But it came back, and all is well now. So all three of them flowered. I believe all three are actually going to set fruit this year. You can see there's one of the flowers fell off, and you can see the fruit starting to set. So these are actually not pollinated by bees. They're pollinated by flies and beetles. Sometimes pollination isn't really successful because flies and beetles are not as great pollinators as bees are. So I am hoping for a decent fruit set on all three trees. These fruit tend to look kind of like a small mango. Rather than having one large pit the way a mango does, they have multiple black seeds that are about the size of your thumbnail, and you can eat the pulp all around them. It's not hard to get the seeds out. The fruit ends up being very soft when it's ripe and is ready to fall to the ground, and then you know that it's really sweet and ready to eat. So they're really tasty, a very unique flavor, and something that you can't find in the grocery store because they bruise very easily and they don't pack and travel well. So plant one in your yard, plant multiple in your yard, because you will need a pollinator. You need more than one genetically unique variety in order to get fruit. And if you do plant these, you'll get to taste Paw Paws, and they're a really delightful experience. Thanks for joining me for the first in the series of adding New Jersey native edible plants to your landscape. If you're growing native edible plants in your landscape, please leave me a comment. Let me know what you're growing and what you love about it. I'd love to hear from you. I hope you join me for the rest of the series, and I'll see you again soon.